Hey tankers, it's Ace Dallenbach here, back with another video in my How To Play series. This time we're taking a closer look at the Chinese Tier 10 medium tank, the 121. Now, the 121 is got its own kind of hybrid-like feeling to it. It feels not quite like a medium, but not quite like a heavy in certain areas, but the best of kind of, in my opinion, of both worlds. I like heavies for the fact that they can take abuse and for the fact that they can pack a serious amount of damage in their guns, and at the same time too, I also like mediums because of their flexibility in combat and how maneuverable and fast they are, enabling you to traverse through the battlefield and get to the key hot points where you need to. Now, the 121 kind of tries to balance those two elements of both a heavy tank and a medium tank. It kind of takes what it can from both to kind of complement those things. And for that, it makes it a very powerful and deadly tank in the right hands if it's played correctly. The thing that really makes it stand out, obviously, is the 122 millimeter. No tier 10 in the game has this kind of caliber weapon on it. It's a very powerful gun. 440 is the highest alpha damage you're going to see on any tier 10, and for that, you're going to pack some serious punch. And that's, as we've discussed before, it's the same amount of damage that you can get out of the IS-4. Really, really impressive. The other thing that's kind of cool about it, and which is something a little bit unexpected, is that its accuracy is a .35 accuracy. That's a crazy dispersion for considering the power of this gun. It's just mind-blowing for me, because when I first played my 121, I did not expect to have a .35 accuracy on the tank at all. It's you can snipe with it, and it's got better accuracy than an M48 Patton and an M60. Even the Japanese STB-1, which it plays very similarly to a Leopard and is intended to be used somewhat as a sniper tank, has an accuracy of .36, and this is still better than that. Where it is gimped, though, it's not all sunshines and rainbows, is the aim time. I believe the Leopard has an aim time of 2 seconds. The STB-1's around there. Same with the other sniper tanks of tier 10, similar tier 10s, including the M60 and the M48. The aiming time here is at 2.7 seconds. So that's where they've kind of gimped it. It does have a slower aim time, but 2.7 seconds is not necessarily a forever aim time. It's not too bad, and if you use ventilation and you have a decent gunner crew skills, you can reduce that aim time by a few points, and it comes pretty close to 2 seconds, which is not bad considering how good that this tank is. If you played through the WZ-120, it was one of those tanks you probably had a love-hate relationship with. I really hyped it in my video review of it, and I really did like it when it worked well for me. However, there were times when the tank just didn't accomplish or execute what I wanted it to do, and a lot of that had to do with some of the issues that it had with it. The WZ-120, the aim time on it was over 3 seconds, so for a medium tank, that's not necessarily the best of thing, especially at tier 9 when you're going to be running into tier 10s with 2-second aim times. If you have to hold a whole extra second to hit a target, you're going to run into issues, especially in those intermediate ranges, and that's kind of where I ran into problems with the WZ. Not to mention that the dispersion on it, even though it was supposed to be a similar gun to this, had a .38 dispersion. So at distances, it wasn't consistent. You'd miss some odd shots that would screw you over, and if you did, the rate of fire would hurt you, which was close to an 11-second reload time. You could get it down, I think, close to 10, but either way, a 10 to 11-second reload on a medium was still slow. I mean, yeah, the Alpha, the gun, could make up for that, but there were times where you could run into issues with that. And the other issue that also made it problematic is that Chinese tanks and Russian tanks, as general, are prone to ammo rack failure and taking damage in the ammo rack, which would increase that reload times exponentially, causing even more problems for the gun and really zapping your alpha damage if your ammo rack was damaged. The 121 still suffers that issue of the ammo rack problem. You still have to be very careful of it, and I feel like this tank actually ammo racks more than the T62A, for example. But that's the only real issue I have with this tank. Everything else about the tank is great. The traverse rate is 50, which is excellent. The top speed of 56, while it's not like lightnings to be fast like a leopard, 56 is plenty fast for what this tank is. The armor values, 120 millimeters in the frontal armor on this slope is great. It is really good. It is a lot. It's surprisingly bouncy if you know how to angle it. A lot more so than the T62A, for example, which you have to hug with it if you're going to engage in close ranges, or you have to be engaging from such a distance that it's not going to bother you. 102 millimeters isn't a lot of armor, especially at tier 10. You're still going to be penned in the 121 in the hull, but not nearly as much. And though that 20 millimeters doesn't seem like a lot, it does play to its strengths. Combine all those features, you get a tank out of the 121 that can pretty much threaten any other medium and still threaten heavies. And it does such a good job in support roles. It does so well in platoons. The other issue I have with it, obviously, and it's to be expected too, is gun depression. But I mean, gun depression and ammo rack issues are the only real two problems it has with it. Everything else it just does so well. And I have some great gameplay for you guys to show you on how you can use this tank. And let's just go ahead and jump in and take a look at that. Okay guys, here we are on South Coast, and I'm currently in platoon with a couple of my platoon mates, Optic Blaster and Gerald62. I'm going to give a shout out to them. Now, I chose my 121 as kind of an example to see if I could coordinate a little bit with heavies, and I think this video is a good example, and we will get a little bit of that team coordination where you can use this tank with coordination with heavies as opposed to just using it in a medium wolf pack. So it's just a different alternative tactic that you can use with mediums as a whole. But this one, I think, the 121 excels probably more so than any other ones because of its heavy characteristics and its powerful alpha gun. So you're just a faster flanker, a tank that you can use on the outside to get around and flank. Now, South Coast is not my favorite map, and the reason why I really don't like this map is because there's so many different approaches. A lot of the opposing team or your allied team will camp on this huge hill that I'm running underneath, and it just causes issues. It's just one of those things that I just don't like this map. There's so many approaches. There's a lot of camping that goes on, and I'm not fond of it for that reason. So here we go. I'm just rushing up underneath the hill. This is kind of one of the common strategies I'd like to use because you can cut off and kind of get some good covering shots here. And I do trade with the Leopard 1 an awkward shot, but I do manage to just throw it out there real fast and make him pay for hitting me and balance things out. And I ended up winning in that exchange because even though the Leopard hit me first, I hit him for more damage than he did because my gun has higher alpha. And I'm sure it surprised him when I fired like I did and hit him, but he should have fired on me and got back to cover, and shame on him for not doing so. So he spots me, I spot him, I get off my shot quicker than he does, and chunk him away, and now I'm ahead for a lot. And finally, I get off my third shot, and that Leopard 1 is gone. Really, that was really poor strategy on his part. After he got behind on the damage, and he knew I was going to keep exchanging with him, he should have gotten to cover, and instead he just saw probably my buddy Optic and Gerald moving up, and just tried to get shots off on those targets, and that was kind of all she wrote. So now here in this center position, we're positioned right underneath the hill, and this position kind of cuts off and controls all of the map. I feel like the center point in the map controls most of everything, and even while this hill up here has its advantages, the problem is that it's very dependent on your opponent pushing, and being too defensive, it limits what you can do. It gives your opponent the opportunity to kind of exploit the weaknesses in your defense, and that's, I think, the issue with the opposing team in getting control of the hill here. By gaining control of the center point, we can lock off essentially this half of the map and make things very difficult for them on this side of the map, and at the same time too also put pressure in the city as we need to, swarm in if we need to, and the only approach that they have essentially that they can make a difference is the beach, and we're heavy there. So this is a really good strategy here for our platoon setup. And as you can see from the center position, I can put fire in this town, which is the only kind of appropriate cover that they can seem to set up on. And the T-110E5 sees me, he fires, but of course I'm able to get down to cover before he can actually get an accurate shot. And he's just trying to make the best of his cover here, but I'm really waiting for that right shot. I don't want to bounce, and I sure enough I get it when he turns his turret awkwardly, and I can pen that side of that turret. Don't don't throw shots out there all the time. It's okay to be patient, especially with an alpha gun where your gun does a ton of damage. And I'm just kind of turning my gun up here because I'm trying to, force a bounce and let my gun eat it if I need to, if they were able to get hit. And I do have a shot there on that copula, but I don't go for it. Was not good enough to really risk it, and I get a back shot on that IS-7, but the angle was weird, and I end up bouncing. That shot was worth trying. It was a little bit of an awkward angle, but it's a disappointment it doesn't penetrate, but we're doing okay. We've already gotten 2,110 damage, and boom, that T110 iced real quick. As you can see, that powerful alpha gun finishing off, and I had help there, but cleaning up and just removing enemy threats is always a good thing to do. And as you can see, this tank is quite maneuverable and able to do that. So now we're facing the hill, and before we get to facing the hill, I figured I'd try to see if I can get rid of the T110 and maybe flank around through the back. But I don't think with those way those enemies are positioned on the hill, I pay for it. It just seems like it's not going to happen, and I figure, oh well, I'm not going to be able to get on that side of the map. The heavies are preventing us from using that axis of advance, and I'm probably going to do better getting some snipe shots here and there. I get off a quick shot on that T110E3 before it drops down. And now my heavies do need my support for sure. So I'm going to move up down through the center road and just meet these two tanks head on. And since we do outnumber them, looks like 3-2, they do have a light. We are going to do really well. So I do aim for the weak point on that T110E3, but even then it does bounce. And that T110E3 is kind of an opportunistic place to penetrate. It seems like it only seems to pen with gold, and I don't really have gold loaded right now, so we're just going to make do without. And now I'm going to try to climb up this awkward terrain here and see if I can get a side shot on that E3, which is for that E100. It has been tracked. I'm able to flank and get the kill shot. A lot of that kill goes to the E5 for just keeping it locked down. And boom, there goes the E100, and that was the game. And I did 2874 damage and scored 8 penetrating hits. Not a bad game at all. But I got still another game for you guys to see, so let's go ahead and skip ahead to that next one. Okay guys, so here we are on Pearl River, and I'm platooned with my brother Death Defiance, and he's also bringing his newly unlocked 121. We both grinded down this line when we first started at the same time, so it's kind of interesting. As a result, we usually unlock sometimes the same tanks at once, and it was kind of the first time we did this, and it worked out really nicely. As a result, I'm able to show you guys some of those effective platoon strategies you can use with this tank. Now, as I've mentioned before in some of my other videos, if I haven't, Pearl River has essentially 3 areas of influence that you can go through. You have the northern approach up here. Heavies have a tendency to go up here. Also here in the center, there's some heavy approaches, a new area they've added. And then you have the outer circle and this lower approach, which is where you usually see either TDs here that like to block this area, as well as TDs up here in this northern approach, and then the long rush, which you'll see an assortment of either a ton of tanks or no tanks. It's one of those interesting things. Like this southern approach I prefer for mediums, because it seems like when it is unguarded you could have an amazing game, but there's other opportunities where you'll run into a ton of tanks, like us for example, and how heavy we are in this approach. And when that happens, if you're too light, you lose. It's either one team's rolling you or one team isn't in this area. But I think that this back area, essentially can make or break the game. So Death got the better spawn, and he's rushing up ahead. But you can see that 55, 56, not the fastest, but definitely not the slowest in terms of the mediums. It's respectable. I mean, it's not as slow as the patent tanks are. That's for sure. And as we come around this corner, we see a REM and a 28 prototype. My brother gets off a quick shot, and you can see that nice high roll of the powerful alpha gun, 464 damage right off the bat, chunking that proto. And I'm just kind of positioning myself here. This tank isn't really suited for sniping. He does expose a little bit of his turret. I do fire, but it's not enough to, really get a nice scoring hit, and we end up hitting in the dirt. And now my brother is seeing some targets over that are located there in the center of the map, and Death Defiance is now chunking away. And actually, you can see us using a little bit of the benefits of this gun at distance. And I'm going to go ahead and finish off that Type 61 that my brother chunked, and then he's going to put another round on that Conqueror for another 486 damage. I'm going to aim, see if I can get a second shot on it, and we miss. But that's at 580 meters away, guys. That is really, really far. That's almost maximum distance you're going to really see in terms of engagement. And as a result, you can't even view that without other tanks spotting for you. And it's just impressive that while this gun is not designed necessarily as a sniper, you can see we're hitting targets consistently at that distance. Now, as we come around this corner, that Rem's right there. He fires in the dirt. I hit him for one, and then my brother finishes him off for the second. And I get ammo racks. Get rid of those Rems, as I've mentioned before. They're dangerous vehicles. So now I'm just going to go ahead and try to close with the prototype. I've repaired my damaged, ammo rack only to have my fuel get damaged. And now I'm going to go for the reload. I don't want to bounce this shot. I hug really close with the prototype and force a bounce. And I penetrate that proto to finish him off. And as you can see, like, we're just chunking stuff we run into with these powerful alpha guns, and the reload time's not too bad. So, plus with the mobility of the mediums, it's move up real fast, kill targets, move up to the next threat. So now we're approaching the cap, and with that Waffen Tiger hiding around here, that Waffen E100, we're being really careful. And we can see the T110E4 approaching in the back area, and from 471 meters, I'm able, as well as my brother, to get another 1-2 hit on that target. And we kind of had a little bit of a traffic jam there, so I move out, and I'm going to go for that Waffentroff. And we know because of that autoloader that because he's fired a ton of shots, I know he's probably either reloading or and that's exactly what it looks like. And it looks like he goes for the awesome death pose here, lifting up his gun in the air, and I finish him off. Gotta laugh at that. Still, again, at distances, you can see this gun is doing just fine. And against heavies, too, we are chunking. And I'm able to hit that weak point on that T110, chunk off another 420 life, and my brother is able to finish off that other target. And there you go. My brother gets off that last target real quickly, and that scores us 3 kills apiece. So you know what that means. Brothers in arms. Gotta love it. Now, I think we can't lose it if one of our crew members dies. But Brothers in Arms is a great medal to have. I really enjoy getting it. If you've ever gotten one, I'm sure it's up there on my list. At least for me, it's one of my preferred medals to obtain. It just means that both you and your platoon mate did a great job, and I think this match does also to just show kind of a little bit of what you can get away with in this tank at distances. Okay guys, so here are the battle results for the 2 matches. Okay, the first one was our second class. It wasn't too bad. 10 direct hits, 1 miss, and 8 penetrations of those 10 hits for a total of 2874. And here's our results for the Pole River, which actually came out to be a 3rd class, but we did manage to get that Brothers in Arms medal. As always, this is Ace Stallenbach signing off.